Welcome back to Honors Biology. So today we're going to talk about really just diffusion today. Osmosis will be its own separate video, but we're going to talk about diffusion. So we've talked about cells, different types of cells, things in the cells. We've covered the cell membrane. Now let's talk about how things actually get in and outside the cell. And one of the ways is through diffusion. But before we go too far with diffusion, there's a couple of basic words that you need to know. And they have to evolve around solutions. So solutions, well, all a solution is a mixture of two compounds, two or more compounds, where one thing is being dissolved in the other thing. So, and think salt water, sugar water. Salt is being dissolved in sugar. That's a solution. Sugar is being dissolved in water. That's a solution. Cornstarch in water, right? Anything that's being dissolved. And really, we talk about there's in a solution, we talk about there being a solvent and a solute. So the solvent is the thing that's doing the dissolving, and that's water. And especially in living things, water. Water is the universal solvent. It dissolves most things. So like everything we do in this class and we talk about there being a solution, water is almost always going to be the solvent there. That's the one's going to be doing the dissolving. And then the solute, that's the thing that's being dissolved. The sugar, salt, the calcium, the whatever it is. So in salt water and sugar water, this water's the solvent. Like water is always going to be the solvent. And then the salt, sugar is the solute. That's what's being dissolved. Right? So with that covered and that out of the way, let's talk about how things get in and out of the cell. And we can really categorize them into two different things: passive transport and active transport. Passive transport, the way I like to think of it, is moving from high to low, requires no energy. And we have three different ways that happens: diffusion, facultative diffusion, and osmosis. And then in active transport, the cell does use energy. That analogy is like trying to go up a hill. If you're going up a hill, you're going to need to use a lot of energy to get up that hill. So, and those are protein pumps, endocytosis, and exocytosis. But in this video, we're just looking at diffusion and facultative diffusion. So we're looking at just these first two for passive transport. So now diffusion, what it is, the difference between diffusion and facultative diffusion is simple diffusion occurs straight through this membrane here. So things can diffuse right through the phospholipid bilayer. That's simple diffusion. Facultative diffusion is when we get larger molecules, they have to go through one of these channel or transport proteins. It's still the same process, just kind of how they do it's a little bit different. That's all. So what diffusion is it's a movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, or move it from one side of a membrane to another unfacilitated. It will just naturally do that. Think of if you drop food dye into a beaker of water, it starts highly concentrated, but then eventually over time, that dye will spread out to turn the entire beaker green or blue or whatever the color is. That's diffusion. That's all it is. And it can occur through the membrane. So we have a high concentration of these red particles outside the cell. These red particles are going to diffuse through the phospholipid bilayer, through the cell membrane, until we get the same concentration, until we reach equilibrium, right? We have 5 on the outside of the cell, 5 inside the cell. That's all simple diffusion is just moving it from high to low. So this is just if we have one solute, right? So just these red cells or these red dyes, all right? This can also happen when we have two. So again, diffusion is just the random movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration. So, and it will keep going until all molecules are evenly spaced. Molecules, when they reach that, I mean, they'll still be moving, but they will stay spread out. If we look at our picture over here, right, we have red particles and like white gray particles. Over time, as you can see, both of them pass through this membrane, this phospholipid bilayer, till they reach the same amount on both, the same concentration on both sides. All right? So diffusion, movement from high to low just through a phospholipid bilayer. Can occur just with one solute or can occur with two or more solutes. Whatever it is, it's just going to keep going so there's an equilibrium on both sides of the membrane. So that's just simple diffusion. Facultative diffusion is the same concept, but this occurs through a transport protein. So some things are just too big to cross, or it's kind of difficult for them just to move across the phospholipid bilayer, kind of like water. Water is hard for it to move across the phospholipid bilayer because of the hydrophobic part of the tails. So these proteins, and they're actually called aquaporin proteins, just help facilitate that. No energy is required, just water will naturally move from the high concentration to the low concentration. So, and again, this is for larger molecules. So if we have, so glucose is an example of a larger molecule that can't just fit through here, or charged molecules. Water is an example of this, just because it can't, if it gets stuck in that hydrophobic part, it won't go anywhere. It gets stuck there and doesn't want to be there. So water actually will move through the same process from high concentrations to low concentrations, but it will occur through a protein. That's facultative diffusion. Still high to low, but just through a protein. This is glucose. Glucose occurs in the same way. Glucose, as you can see, we have a high concentration from outside the cell. And then through this transport protein, through this channel protein, it'll go to low concentration. Because glucose is too big to fit through the lipid bilayer, right? These molecules just will hit the head and bounce out. So they have to go through a transport channel protein. It's still from high concentration to low concentration, just through a protein. That's all I got for this video. So again, we covered diffusion and facultative diffusion. Both are from high concentrations to low concentrations. It's just how they occur. Simple diffusion is just through the lipid bilayer. Facultative diffusion has to occur through a channel protein or a transport protein. All right. If you have any questions, write them down. Let me know in class. Shoot me an email. I'll see you all next time in class.